Hello and welcome to 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk. I'm your host, Coach Kevin Bull Jones, and today I have a wonderful guest on the show today. He's a 13-year veteran of the NFL with Chicago Bears. He's also a fan favorite veteran from UGA, University of Georgia, Bulldog, and as well from Metro Atlanta, Redan High School, sensation kicker, former teammate and colleague of mine at that wonderful high school we call Redan Raiders in Stone Mountain, Georgia. But to the show, we have a fantastic a few minutes of some great conversation about past, present, and future. So if you like the show, please join. Once again, 100 Yards of Football. We welcome Kevin Butler. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Good to see you, Kev. I hope everything's going well with you.
Well, it's football season.
Yep.
And it's that time of the year again. And we actually, in spite of everything we've been going through, we get a chance to talk some football. And for some of us, be able to coach some football. But for you, you've done it all. You had a chance to coach, teach, play at the highest level, Super Bowl champion, All-American, the first kicker to ever go into the College Football Hall of Fame, as well as, the thing that I marvel at the most, you came from Redan High School, which I think is still one of the best high schools ever for kickers. Would you agree?
Well, I would. I think we've had a pretty good lay of the land out there. We always had a good soccer program there, and I think, Coach Shankweiler and the coaches I had back then and you had, I think they just valued every part of the game. Coach Shankweiler back then, I think our coaching staff, Kev, went to Arkansas back then for their coaching clinic. Okay. And Lou Holtz was back there, and they had a great kicker there named Steve Little, All-American. And I remember Coach Shankweiler distinctly coming back and saying, "You've got to create steps." And I went, "Well, what do you mean?" And it's like the old 3 back and 2 over. And the philosophy was you got to start at the same point every time to finish at the same point every time. And that creates consistency. And I remember staying out there with Coach Tommy Marshall for, hours on hours, just really frustrated with the process because it was something new to me. But thank gosh they did it, because it really gave me a good foundation at an early time in my career to be a consistent kicker.
Wow. And mentioning back in those days, Coach Shankweiler, who's now currently at Eastern Carolina University, a wonderful coach. And I have vivid memories, we both do, of him and his personality, his ability to relate to players and get them to win them over was so amazing for me, coming in as a youngster under you guys and watching how he gelled with everybody. And he made everybody feel special, important. And Coach Hogan, Coach Marshall, Coach Barber, also on that staff, and those days were fantastic for me as a young kid, going into high school, and then getting a chance to watch you guys, be able to be as good as you all were. And the kickers, after you left, we had David Moffitt. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, we had Wes Ball, and then later it was Chris Gardocki.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will admit, I think we had a little advantage once we got inside the 40.
Well, you did. I mean, I think, that's one thing that, Coach Shankweiler believed in. He knew that could be a weapon. And I think what he did was he made us practice it enough to where not only was he confident in sending us out there, we were confident. And I think, boy, when you go back to Redan in 1976, we were a brand new school. We were 8th, 9th, and 10th. Right. And then we got another year at 11th grade. And then our first graduating class was 3 years. Right. And that second graduating class, we had gelled. We were, a lot of the kids that were on that team, we had all grown up together since 8 and 9. Whether it was somebody's front yard or Mike Parris's tennis court in his backyard, we were always competitive, doing something. That's just what we grew up doing. There was no internet. There were no phones. If you got off of school, you went outside and played sports and did fun things. And, certainly the world's changed by now, but that gave us an opportunity to bond, if you say, and grow close as a team. And it all came together that 1979 year. I think we had something like maybe 14 guys receive scholarships off of that team.
Yes.
And that's just unheard of. But, what it goes back to is we had Mr. Halford, our principal, was so much support. Coach Shankweiler and his staff committed to us, and he wanted that commitment back. And still, I go back. I've been on some great teams. I put that 1979 team right up there with any championship team I was on because we were good. We were good at what we did, and we beat some really good teams with all different kind of personalities. But it was it's something that behind me I've got a bunch of memorabilia, and my state championship team is right up there.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember that year we opened up. I think we went 14-1, correct? But we lost to Stone Mountain. To talk about that, I remember that, and coming in as a youngster, I didn't realize the rivalry between Redan and Stone Mountain, and then later on found out the schools look just like each other. They look like twins. Talk about that.
Yeah, they did. Both schools were designed exactly the same. Not many windows. We had a commons area, which was new. But the first fall that we went to school as Redan Raiders, we went to Stone Mountain's old high school because they were still finishing Redan. So after that Christmas break is when we finally stepped into our new school. And, some of our first meetings, when I was in 8th grade, we were over at the old Stone Mountain School, and it was a dirt field. There were no grass on it. And we had the classic Penn State uniforms, white helmet, white jersey, white pants. And I think when we got a blue stripe, we felt like we got whole new uniforms. So it was a program that you really got to see how we grew. And I can't tell you how much those coaches, from Coach Barber to Coach Carden to Coach Shankweiler and Coach Hogan, those guys were fabulous at what they did. They were able to not only get us excited about it, but they built really the future for Redan High School. And that's a big undertaking. And, unfortunately, after we won that state, everybody came in and we want this coach, we want that coach. And that's the life of coaches, as you know, Kevin, and that's a compliment. And then we had Coach Billy Kluwer come in and take over at that reign. So it was an evolution of a high school that I think was on. You just don't see it happen. The funniest thing that I take from that, we won state in 4 years.
Yes.
And I think we did it the first time since maybe it was like Cartersville did it in 1955.
Right.
But you fast forward, the next school that did it after Redan was my son's school, Peachtree Ridge. And in 4 years, they won the state title and co-shared it with Roswell. But you have to have a community. You have to have coaches. And you have to have players that can bob and weave during those first years because you really don't have everything. You're creating your routine, and you can't do that without great coaches. And we certainly had that advantage at Redan.
Definitely. That state championship year, first game, we lost to Stone Mountain. I think it was quite a tough game, if I'm not mistaken.
Here, let me tell you how tough it was for this kid. I was a starting defensive back and kicking, and I was backing up Jay Terrell at quarterback. We lost 10-9. I missed an extra point.
Yeah.
And I also did the old thing that DBs just don't like to do. I bit on the halfback pass. I was coming up on that pitch, and I saw that guy kind of lift his hands up to throw it, and I just went, please don't do that. And that ball went over my head, and we lost 10-9. And, I took it as tough as I've ever taken anything because We had worked so hard, and we really felt like we had something special, and we did. And it was I think Coach Barber was the one guy that came up to me and just said, "Don't worry about it. You got to learn from these kind of things." And we went on, didn't miss any more extra points, and the last field goal of that year was quite significant. So it was it was a process when I was learning how to be a kicker,
Right.
and being responsible, and being able to take the misses with the wins, and I think every good kicker now, you've got to be able to find that balance, and that balance process started for me back in probably before '79, but certainly in '79.
Well, definitely. A lot of people ask me questions, but I say, well, no, he was more than just a kicker. He also played defensive back. And I mentioned, some of the quarterback, and people looking at me, are you serious? I was like, yeah, he was more than an athlete. I mean, more than a kicker. He was an athlete, but also, your wrestling background, in your younger B team program and the wrestling, just a little toughness part. I always thought you were very cool. And the cool part about it is it's almost like a quiet assassin. We were young kids, all wide-eyed, and all we wanted to do is be the best players we can be. But it did make a difference to the people that we got a chance to model for how you go about the work ethics, and success. And the vivid points for me from the '79 season was of course, the loss to Stone Mountain, and then I remember Coach Shankweiler. It was a rainy, muddy day, and I remember him taking a running start and diving straight into the mud, and it was just crazy. And it just made everybody loosen up, because here's our head coach doing it. So I mean, now everybody else is fine. But then the championship game, beating Marist, Marty and Mark Henniger, Derek Clayton on defense, Henniger twins, fascinating, Rusty Bennett. Those days were really etched in stone, so that when it was time for you to leave, our program wanted to keep that momentum going, even though it changed with coaching and things of that nature. And it was amazing, like you mentioned, all the people that were on that team that were able to go to the next level and play college football. I mean, that to this day, Todd Nunley, I still think was one of the hardest hitters ever in high school football to this day.
Absolutely. Mark Holland, you could go Kevin Benson. Here comes a guy in from San Luis Obispo in California, and his dad and them moved here, and Kevin was he was a maniac out there, and Coach Shankweiler had practice going so hard that you make a good point. You wanted to practice hard, and you wanted to emulate people on your team. And that always followed me throughout my career. And it started at Redan. If we could make it through practice, we knew we weren't playing anybody tougher on a Saturday or a Friday night. Right. We were the toughest team. We were very physical. It was a physical practice. And I found that to be true during my time at Georgia. And certainly my time at Chicago Bears, where we knew if you could make it through practice, the games were going to be fun, because it wasn't going to be harder than practice, and you could enjoy yourself. And that's what we did. Coach Shankweiler was on that cutting edge. I remember, it was one of maybe it was a Lithonia game or something, but he came in there and pregame and sat us down, and you might recall this. He starts telling us a story about this young kid who, was sick, and all he wanted to be was a Redan Raider, and this and this, and everybody's in there. We're crying and we're getting all fired up. We go out there and we won the game. It was one of the region games. Yep. And so many years later, we go back and hey, coach, that was an unbelievable story, and how did it ever turn out for that kid? And I remember him looking at us going, there wasn't a kid. I'm just trying to do something to get you guys focused, and you know what? It worked, and I probably have heard that story 10 times since then. So right. It's what coaches have to do, but that was new to us back then, and we jumped on board, and it was something that really did shape my life. I played DB. Right. I returned punts. I returned kicks. I punted, kicked off, field goals. So, I'd play a little bit receiver.
Right.
So we were always in there. But, one thing that we did that was very important, and I was talking about this to Rusty Bennett, who's still a dear friend, and me and Rusty talk almost on a daily basis, is, we were really a two platoon football. We had an offense and we had a defense, and not too many people he would let play both sides.
That's right.
Because he knew you would be better, you would not be tired, and then we would have a better chance in the fourth quarter. So we really did have two platoons. If you got to go in at receiver a couple of times, it was something there you were wanting to get in there, but
Right.
you knew not to really go beg for it because that wasn't going to get you in. They had a system, and the system worked, and it helped tremendously that we were together for basically 5 years. And so we all knew each other. We knew what to expect. We knew the standards that we'd set because, that first year we played, I think, 7 games.
Yeah.
And we went up to Etowah. We would go all over the place just trying to find a game. And I was in 8th grade. So we had a JV team. And the DeKalb County rule at that point was you could not play 8th grade and then play JV.
Right.
But we were playing in so many places other than close to home. Coach would say after that 8th grade game, Kevin, go get changed and get on the bus.
Right.
You're going with the team. And, probably first 3 or 4 games, I never got in there, but he did start to put me in there. And I remember, I remember Coach Mr. Halford calling my dad and saying, you need to come up here. We got to go meet with the county. Somehow they found out that Kevin was playing both. And so we went and met with them. And basically what it came down to is we really weren't a varsity team yet. We were still that in between, played some varsities, played some B teams. And they let it slide because I think Coach Shankwaller was claiming that, we didn't have enough people and, all the things he was saying. But we pushed the envelope to try to get better. And it worked, and it gave me a lot of respect. As you were saying a minute ago, Kev, you would get motivated by people on your team and how they handle themselves. When I went to the Bears, Walter Payton. Who else did you need to look at of how he prepared? So you held yourself to that standard. All the guys at Georgia and what Coach Dooley demanded was not much different than what Coach Shankwaller demanded. So nothing ever surprised me about what the next level took to compete.
That's right. Compete on the next level. Yes. And compete is what you did. When you get a chance, let's take a look at this kick you had. Kevin, let's take a look at this kick. My producer popped a video up of that famous, and you talking about toughness.
Well, that was a great game. That day Clemson came in ranked number 2, Kev, and then they were beating us like a redheaded stepchild. I mean, they did. I think it was 20-3 or something at halftime. And I remember coming in at halftime, and Coach Dooley actually took a chair and threw it up against the wall. And it was kind of a wake-up call for us. And we came back out in that second half, got a turnover. We scored, got a turnover, scored again. And, 80,000 people, that place was rocking. And that's what that game was really all about. We had played Clemson for 3 prior years, 2 national championships. Donald Ikpe-Wikbe, you see kicking there. He was a great one. But, we had a team that just fought. And as a kicker, you want to compliment them. And all I was there was talking to Coach Dooley, just, get past the 50. And I'm gonna make it. And we didn't get too far past the 50, but we got past it. And it was the confidence that Coach had in me. He knew I was prepared.
Right.
And the main thing to me was I just didn't want to let my brothers down out there. That was a hot day. It was everything you would expect in college football. And when I got the chance to go out there at the end of the game, I was confident. People say, what were you thinking? You don't really think too much. You want to go
I was
out
going
there,
to ask you what you're
and
thinking.
react. I mean, if you go out there thinking, do this, do that, do this, you're not in your routine. And kickers, as I was coaching a young kid last night, the first thing I told him is you got to build a routine. You've got to be able to set yourself up for success. And as you see me, I lined it up. I made sure that I was marked down the middle. And I remember Jimmy Harrell looking at me going, I'm going to lean it back a little. I go, that would be a wise idea. And I knew when I hit it, I hit it. And, you can tell, first couple of seconds, if it's going to stay on line or not. And I knew it did. The one thing I didn't think about was the 15-yard penalty I'd get for celebrating like I was Pele or somebody. But I went straight towards that student section, and I did a little knee slide, and it was something that I'll never forget. And I hope all those people in the stadium don't forget either. As it looks back now, I've met millions of people, and probably at least 500,000 people were at that game. At least they tell me that. So I know there was only
and they were right there.
Yeah,
I was right there in my living room watching, and I can't help but think maybe some of those corny jokes that Coach Barber used to have back at Reed End before you kick, and he would send them through Joyner. He'd send them through him, and that you'd get a chance to, some of those corny jokes might have helped get you loose a little bit.
Well, he did. Coach Barber, what he did when I'd go out to warm up for a pregame, Coach Barber would always go out with me. And I looked forward to it because he wasn't my teacher at that point. And he wasn't even really my coach at that point. He was a partner of mine out there getting warmed up, and he used to keep me loose. And he would tell me jokes. And, hey, as bad as it was, he'd look over there and go, yeah, 50 yards over to the right. And I'd look over there and he goes, they got pretty cheerleaders, don't they? I'm like, yeah, they do. They do. He goes, well, if you kick good, maybe I'd get out there and I'd go, I got to kick these balls good, And we did it all. We did it all. He'd say, he'd tell me, he goes, that's that receiver you got to cover today. He goes, cover him good, you'll get to kick more extra points. And I think, yeah, that's good stuff. And he was great because, again, he was consistent. If I did good or bad, he was always there to get me back on track. And get me thinking positive instead of dwelling on the negatives. And Coach, in today's world with our athletes and our young athletes out there, when something happens that's not good, it's hard to get away from. And it's okay to get away from it and clear your mind and get back in that positive thought. But nowadays, every time you turn on media or any type thing, somebody's talking about it. And that to me, I think is very tough. And I would encourage athletes of all sports during your season, stay away from it. It's not going to help you. And if it's all good things they say, they're building you up. As Coach Dicker used to tell you, they build you up so they can tear you down. And, there's always an effect to any kind of action. There's a reaction to an action. And, that's the things you have to be aware of.
Speaking of Coach Dicker, as well as Coach Dooley, and we've talked about Coach Shankweller, but with those other two coaches, Coach Dooley and Coach Dicker, give me a aha moment or one of the funniest moments you probably had with those two coaches. Because with Coach Dooley, you always saw the same guy, or we're just gonna, he's very that solemn guy, kind of wasn't dry, but it wasn't, something that you was gonna chuckle at. But behind the scenes, give us what you saw as probably one of the best moments for those two coaches.
Yeah, well, I'll start with Coach Dooley. I always played soccer. That probably was my favorite sport growing up. I'd always played football and always played soccer. I just enjoyed soccer. I enjoyed the challenge of it. I never came off the field.
Gotcha.
So that was fun. And I was pretty good back then. I couldn't run around. I can't even run 60 yards anymore. So football and soccer are off. But when I went to Georgia, Coach Dooley was very military. Rules were rules. Doesn't matter who you were. there weren't different rules for different players, and
Correct.
that you respected. But I still loved playing soccer, and so when I was playing at Georgia football, off season would come, I'd go back and join my club in Atlanta Hurricanes, and
Right.
Danny O'Brien was our coach, who's in the Soccer Hall of Fame, and
Wow.
we had a great team.
I'm quite sure back then that sounds like something Coach Dooley didn't want to see happen. I'm quite sure of that.
I'd go out there, and I enjoyed playing. So I'd get back in the off season, and so we had a big tournament in the spring up in Athens, and I got Kevin Jackson, who's a dear friend of mine. I got him to come out. A couple other players, John Lastinger. I said, "You guys come on out." And they didn't know what soccer was. They were from South Georgia, so they came out there, and they really thought it was pretty cool. And we were playing some pretty high level soccer at that time. And I had scored a pretty good goal that game, and I think I took one off the chest, off the knee, turned around and shot it, and they were all thrilled. Well, there was a person from the Athens Banner Herald there.
Uh-oh.
So the next morning, they got a picture of me playing soccer on the front page of the paper. Well, that afternoon, I didn't put two and two together. That afternoon, I got a call, said, Coach Dooley wants to see you in your office. And I'm thinking, well, what did I didn't do anything wrong. First thing you think of, coach wants to see you, you've done something wrong.
Right.
Well, I go and I'm trying to think, well, I've been at practice. I couldn't be school. So I get up in there and he says, sit down, Kevin. I'm sitting down. Yes, sir. He goes, tell me about this kickball. And I honestly, I looked at him, I go, kickball? I go, Coach, I haven't played kickball since probably grammar school.
Right.
He goes, I said, are you talking about soccer? He goes, yeah, soccer. He goes, I go, oh yeah. I go, yeah, I had a game this week. He goes, who told you could play soccer? Right then I was like, well, I've always played soccer. He goes, did you read that scholarship you signed? I went, no, but I signed it. And he goes, you have to get permission to play other sports other than football from us. I said, well, okay, coach, can I play? He went, no. I went, all right, well, I guess soccer career's over. So, and he was like, he really explained it to me. He's like, now, do you think it's fair that you're out there and you're playing another sport, and your team's back here working, and you do something that hurts you, and then you're not going to be there for your team? And I went, totally understand.
Yep.
And I said, I agree with you. And at that point, there was no more soccer. And it was I can always remember him when he said the kickball. I was like, I almost started laughing in front of him, but thank goodness I didn't. But that was when I think he challenged me to really commit to being a kicker, because it was tough for me to do that. Coming out of high school, playing all the sports I played, as you said, wrestling.
Yeah, I remember
wrestling. To Steve Shankwaller. They took soccer from a winter sport to a spring sport. And Coach Shankwaller, his only rule for all of us, as you remember, is you will be doing something each quarter.
Correct.
So whether it was basketball or something in the winter, you had to be involved. Spring, it was either track or football or baseball or something. And so I had a gap. And old Coach Barber says, come on out for wrestling. You'd be great at it. That was the hardest sport I ever did. I did it for 1 year, and thank goodness, I just told myself, I'm not going to do wrestling anymore. I'm always on my back, always have somebody on top of me, and it just didn't seem like fun. So he let me slide with that my going into my senior year, which unfortunately got cut short by injury, and then I graduated early. But getting back to Coach Ditka, well, Coach Ditka was one of a kind. I talk to Coach Ditka still a lot. Coach Ditka challenged you. Coach Ditka was boisterous. He would get up in your face. He would tell you things that you're sitting there going, why would you say that to me? And the story goes is after we won the Super Bowl, Buddy Ryan took the job at the Philadelphia Eagles. Next year, we play the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, the media builds it up to where whoever wins this game, that head coach was probably the real head coach of the Super Bowl champions. Well, that didn't sit well with Ditka. He was a wreck that week. Fast forward, we go into overtime in that game, and Kevin was 1 for 5. That's not good, even if you're a baseball player.
That's right.
So we go into overtime, and I'm thinking, well, I got a ring. I'm going to get fired after this game. We go in overtime, and we have to kick off. So we kick off, and God bless his soul, Dave Dorson goes down there and jacks the guy. The ball goes up in there. We recover it like on the 8-yard line.
Right.
And Greg Landry, our offense coordinator, goes, let's kick a field goal. And I'm standing right next to Ditka, and he looked at me, and he looked at Greg. He goes, are you crazy? I'm going, I think he is crazy, man. Let's run that ball in, man. Let's get it in. Because it was just one of those days. We go first, second. We get to third down, and they're going, he goes, Coach, we should, in case there's a bad snap or something, let's do it. He goes, I'm not putting him out there on the field. Oh, we get the fourth down. We have to kick a field goal, and it's probably a 19-yard field goal at this point. He looked at me on the sideline before I went in there. Kevin, he goes, you are the worst kicker I've ever seen. Do you think you can hit your foot on the ball? I said, yes, sir. I said, I'm going to make it you watch. He looked at me quickly and said, I'm not watching. I go out there, I kick it, I make it. I ran right back over to him. I said, I told you I'd make it. And he snapped at me. He goes, I told you I wasn't watching. And I'm like, all right. Well, I got to the meeting the next day, and Butler stand up. I stood up. I thought I was honestly going to get cut right then. He goes, I just want y'all to look at a guy that didn't have a job near the end of that game, but after that game, he kept it. And so he was that kind of guy. If you didn't stand up for yourself, Kevin, he didn't want anything to do with you. And you could be a great player, but he wanted to see that fire that he had. And I think I got a lot of that over my career because I just wanted to be more than just a kicker to him. I wanted to be considered a football player, and it's a really tough thing for kickers to be deemed a football player. But the way I prepared myself and the way I worked with all my teammates, they always accepted me as a football player.
Well, maybe that explains why him and Jim McMahon had so many. Jim McMahon looked like he'd probably stand up to him, I guess. That's probably
they were exactly alike. I mean, Coach Ditka played exactly like Jim played, and I think Coach Ditka almost got jealous to a point that he still couldn't be out there and that Jim was having all the fun. But, Mike was a guy who he wouldn't make curfew. He'd get back out there on the next day and just beat people and be a dominant player. And Jim was a freelancer. Curfew was not on the game plan for him. But if he went to bed early the night before, I'd be worried. I was like, something's wrong with Jim. Something's wrong with Jim if he's in bed right now. So they had a lot in common, and they're the dearest of friends now, and that's what really makes it special.
Well, definitely, you had the pleasure of being in the audience of some great men. Even to this day, for me, Coach Shankweiler and I still talk, and he's been a mentor of mine, in reference to the collegiate level and coaching. And when he was at Georgia Tech, he gave me some outstanding advice about, making that decision to possibly coach on the collegiate level or coach in high school. And I never forgot, one of the most sound things I've ever heard a coach say is, if you're going to coach high school football, coach those kids like they take them through step by step, piece by piece, be extreme detail, act like they don't know the game and teach it to them to the best of your ability. And I followed that. And the whole thing, when I was at Lovejoy, the practice, the tempo, the tenacity to get the practice was harder. I grabbed that from him, as well as some things from Coach Cloran on the strategic end of it. So to hear about Coach Dooley, who I had great respect for, had a chance to meet him at Coach Clover's funeral, because Coach Clover was buried up at on the UGA campus, in that place for the former players, that I just thought was amazing. And to watch that man have so much vibrancy in his voice and his life at the age he is just totally miraculous. And he could remember back in the day when he came to the Mayor's game, state championship game. So I appreciate those things as I get older. And then hearing the stories about Coach Dicker, had a chance to meet Richard Dent, and because he's from the Metro Atlanta area, and met him through a friend one time, and I just asked him, was some of those stories about Dicker true? And he just had this big grin on his face, and he said, if you only knew, what you saw was what you got.
Yeah.
So to hear you echo those same things, and then watching you come back to Georgia as a GA student, congratulations on your degree that you worked on.
Thank you.
But now watching you on the sidelines and coaching and working with players, I need to know from you, because you stepped on the other end of it I call it the abyss, because coaching is different. Yeah. Tell me how that was for you, stepping over there at Georgia.
It was, first of all, it was an honor, no doubt. When Coach Smart gave me the opportunity to do that, I jumped on it. I really felt like what they were asking me to do, help the kickers and punters and snappers, and really the overall special teams, was a natural, and they needed it at that point, which, as you know, always makes a coach better.
Right.
I mean, when there are issues, you can help guide some kids through it. But with William Ham and Rodrigo at that point, there was a pretty good competition going on, and both of them were inconsistent. And again, it goes back to some simple things about routines and what you're thinking, and when you miss, what are you processing? I think the one thing that you've done, and I'm compliment you on as much as any other coach I've had, first thing you got to do is get the trust of your team. And what you're doing now, getting trust of young teenage men that get in there, that's the biggest challenge. Because once you get the trust of those young kids, you can shape them and challenge them, and they accept it. And that's the one thing that I did with the kickers at Georgia. The best thing that happened to Rodrigo when I was there was I got him to break away from his father, which his father's awesome. His father loves him. His father's helped him throughout everything. But there comes a time when even the bird pushes you out of the nest. And that hadn't happened for Rodrigo yet. Wow. And the way it happened was kind of unfortunate, because his dad talked in the paper and about Kirby, and Rodrigo made a statement at that point. He came out and go, I'm my own person. I will be in charge of me, not my father anymore. And that was the biggest thing that's ever happened. That was a maturity process for Rodrigo. Right. Happened almost overnight. And that really opened him up to becoming a great kicker that he is, because he started to listen to me and not kind of hear what he wanted to. When you listen, you apply. When you hear, it goes in one ear and out the other. And Rodrigo did that, and that was fun. And then we just worked on building confidence, from his practice routine. You go out there and you have a good practice, as you know, you're going to have a good game, or at least you're going to have the best chance to have a good game. And the preparation part was it was so easy for Rodrigo, because he's a hard worker. He's a great listener, and he's coachable. And, you know as good as anybody, coachable kids make coaches look a little better. So,
amen.
Challenges, you have your challenges on a daily basis that, you haven't really broke through with some of those kids. And, at first I felt like we were up against a pretty good wall with Rodrigo, but I couldn't be more prouder than the young man, and certainly what he's doing now up at the Indianapolis Colts. I'm always tweeting him and making sure that he knows that everybody back here in Georgia is very proud of him.
Well, definitely. I appreciate you stepping into what I call the abyss of coaching, because it pours, it takes something out of you to give some of you to a kid at whatever age group he is. And there's a part of you that is partaking to that kid that a lot of times high school coaches, coaches in general, just knowing the impact that you have on people. And that's the amazing part of it in my career. And I'm always so ecstatic when I see good people that I know or familiar with or played with or come across be able to, I call it giving back, but it's really sharing part of you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think a great word is investing.
Right.
You are investing your valuable time as a father, as a husband,
Right.
in kids that you look at like your own. And I hope most parents out there understand that. I think most parents would love to have the quality time with their children like coaches do. What you do is incredible. I got a lot of people after that stint with Georgia coming at me. You should be special team coach. I went, time out. I am not a coach. I'm a specialist coach, which is about 23 hours less than what a real coach is. And a real coach is 24/7.
Correct.
And at this point in my career, I have way too much respect for what you do and for what coaches at every level do, because I'm just honestly, I'm not there. I played, I've been in the sport. I love it. I'll do anything to help anybody out, but my life has taken different turns, and with grandkids, and I love going and coaching. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with kicking. I think that keeps my tank full,
Right.
But in no way, shape, or form. And I almost get mad when people say, "Oh, you could coach special teams." I'm going, "You don't have a clue." I'd probably fall asleep in the film room, because kickers, you get in a dark room, you go, "Huh? What's going on?" There's not much film to look at. You can paint a picture of a goalpost, and you say you got to go in between them. Outside's bad. That's pretty much my film work. And it's really amazing, and it's an honor, really, for what you do, Kev, because people shouldn't take it lightly. Coaches shape young men's lives. Coaches shape young women's lives. They give them direction. They give them power, and they give them confidence. And those three things are something that any kid that grows up without that is really missing a valuable part of his foundation.
Well, I definitely want to say, on behalf of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk, I appreciate you spending time with me today. I know we see each other at different functions and sometimes events, whatever happens, especially when it pertains to Redan High School and the place that we belovedly call home for life. Great memories, great times, great bondage of men helping me to become a man. Wow. And likewise with yourself, and those gentlemen that helped us and touched our lives were able to help us manifest to where we are today at whatever level of touching lives. And man, I thank you for being able to spend some time with me. And I know there's so much stuff we can laugh and talk about, and maybe that'll be for another show, because we can definitely spend some time talking about some funny years and times. But I want to thank you for spending time with us today. It meant everything to have a talk about the good old days, as well as the Georgia days and the Chicago days.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate it. And thank you for paying it forward. That's what I think the coaches that we had when we were young taught you. If you got something and you got some love for something, pay it forward, pass it on. You're only going to help people. And I appreciate what you're doing for all our youth out there. And don't ever think it's not important, because it's the most important.
Thank you so much. Well, sports fans, thank you for tuning in and listening to Time to Chat with former NFL great, Georgia great, and Redan Raider great.
There you go.
Kevin Butler. Got to say all three of those.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin, for spending time with us today.
Go Raiders.
Go Raiders. We are 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk.